From the Bronx TV and radio studios at UTPA in Edinburgh, it's the Bronx Sports Report. What's happening, Bronx Nation? I'm Daniel Morales. I'm going to be giving you the Bronx Radio Sportscast for this week. This week, we have a rundown of Week 4 of the NFL and your fantasy football inside report. But first,
the Killer Bees are back and the Rio Grande Valley is ready for some hockey. After taking 1 year off, the State Farm Arena will be the home to the new Killer Bees team. This squad plays in the North American Hockey League, and this league is classified as Junior A Tier 2 League, mostly made up of 17 to 20-year-olds who are trying to make it to the NCAA Division 1A hockey and eventually onto the NHL. The squad played its first game back Saturday night in the first of a 2-game series against Wichita Falls. The Killer Bees dropped both games but look to rebound with an upcoming road trip to Odessa. The Killer Bees' next home game is Friday, October 11th at the State Farm Arena as they take on the Lone Star Wolves. For Bronx Radio Sports, I'm Marianne Garcia.
October is finally here, and you know what that means. It's time for playoff baseball. The regular season was extended one more game, and the Tampa Bay Rays outlasted the Texas Rangers 5-2, securing the final wildcard spot. This means the Rays will travel to Cleveland to play the Indians in a 1-game playoff. The winner gets the chance to take on the Boston Red Sox in a 5-game series. The Detroit Tigers will travel to Oakland, playing the A's in their 5-game series. In the National League, Central Division rival Cincinnati Reds travel to Pittsburgh, taking in the Pirates for their 1-game playoff. The winner plays division champ St. Louis Cardinals. On the other side of the National League, the Los Angeles Dodgers, sparked by their miraculous run, travel to Atlanta to take on the Braves. With 163 games in the books and only a few teams remaining, let's see who can win it all. For Bronx Radio Sports, I'm Judy Koinukai.
Welcome to the NFL Wrap-Up Week 4. A lot of intense games this week. You'll hear about all of them. Let's go! This week kicked off in St. Louis with the Rams and 49ers. It was a bounce-back game for San Francisco as they moved to 2-2, taking it 35-11. NFC North game with the Lions and Bears. Reggie Bush rushed for 139 yards and a TD. Detroit hands Chicago its first loss. Both teams are now 3-1. Lions win it 40-32. The 4-0 Chiefs blew away the 0-4 Giants at Arrowhead. Alex Smith threw for 288 yards and 3 touchdowns. Kansas City breezes through the Big Blue 31-7. Bengals and Browns. Cincinnati struggled to put anything together offensively, while Cleveland rolled with the pass-happy Hoyer 25-38 for 269 yards and 2 TDs. The Browns get their second win in a row and top the Bengals 17-6. Both teams are now 2-2. Andrew Luck and the 3-1 Colts steamrolled the 0-4 Jaguars 37-3. It was a nail-biter in Buffalo with the Ravens. Joe Flacco had a rough game, throwing 25 of 50 for 354 yards and 2 TDs and 5 picks. Even with the turnovers, the Ravens managed to stay in it, but the Bills were too much and pulled out the win 23-20. A very slow game in Tampa Bay between the Bucs and Cardinals. Winless Tampa Bay testing out Glennon, giving him his first start under center. After scoring all the points in the fourth quarter, Arizona took the game 13-10. They improved to 2-2. An interesting game across the pond. The winless Vikings faced off against the winless Steelers at Wembley Stadium in London. Adrian Peterson had a good game and rushed for 140 yards and 2 TDs. Pittsburgh gets the 4th straight loss as Minnesota gets their first W, 34-27. Redskins and Raiders. RG3 had a bit of a bounce-back game in the black hole of Oakland, giving Washington its first win 24-14. The Texans and Seahawks. The Texans came out strong, leading at the half 20-3. The Seahawks came roaring back in the fourth, following many Houston errors to tie it up 20-20. In OT, Houston couldn't convert, and Seattle gives Houston a taste of their own medicine, winning it 23-20. Seattle stays perfect at 4-0. Dallas and San Diego. The Cowboys had a similar game to the Texans. All their points came in the first half. Rivers was on for the Chargers. He threw for 401 yards and 3 TDs and a pick. The Cowboys couldn't put anything together in the second half, and the Chargers pulled it out 30-21. The Falcons and Patriots. Matt Ryan had 421 yards, 2 TDs and a pick, while Brady threw for 316 yards and 2 TDs. Matty Ice looked to be cool in the fourth, driving his team under the 2-minute offense, but they couldn't convert, and the Pats remained perfect 4-0, taking the game over Atlanta 30-23. The Dolphins struggled in New Orleans as the Saints put on a clinic. Breeze threw for 413 yards and 4 TDs. The Saints improved to 4-0 as they take the win 38-17. From Bronx Radio Sports, I'm David Sullivan.
Welcome to the Week 5 edition of the Bronx Radio Fantasy Football Minute. Lions quarterback Matthew Stafford is the man in charge of one of the league's most explosive offenses. Stafford has a favorable matchup this week against the Green Bay Packers. The Packers have allowed the 5th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Giants tailback David Wilson's been a huge disappointment in the land of fantasy football. That could change this week. Wilson's going up against the Philadelphia Eagles, who have allowed an average of 18 fantasy points to opposing running backs. It's a no-brainer to start Demaryius Thomas and Wes Welker, but fantasy owners should keep Eric Decker in their lineups as well. In his last 3 games, Decker's averaged 12 fantasy points. Decker has a great matchup this week, going up against the Dallas Cowboys, who allow the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Carolina Panthers tight end Greg Olsen has averaged a solid 8 fantasy points per game before Carolina's bye week. His success should continue. Olsen's going up against the Arizona Cardinals, who have been a fantasy tight end's dream. That'll do it for me this week. For Bronc Radio Sports, I'm Javi Guerrero.
Football in middle school is an exciting milestone for most teenagers, but last week an untimely death was announced by Corpus Christi ISD. CCISD spokesperson Lorette Williams announced the death of 13-year-old Cameron Espinosa, who played for Haas Middle School. According to NBC5 Dallas-Fort Worth, he was bitten by red ants on the lower portion of his right leg between his socks and uniform pants warming up before the second half. CCISD further stated that Cameron tried to use a water bottle to remove the ants, but fell unconscious and died 5 days later. No one knew that Cameron was allergic to ant bites. For Bronc Radio Sports Report, I am Fred Mann.
Well, that's it for this week's Bronc Report. I would like to thank radio station manager Khadija Zarate, news director Ivan Herrera, and all the radio station staff. And as always, be sure to support your UTPA athletics. Go Bronx!